example of food, we see that quite often, particularly in the NGO world, they will look for hungry kids, emaciated kids who are hungry, malnourished, and so forth, and they'll take images of those uh, kids or children, and even their mothers. They go to situations where there's conflict. Obviously, you're going to see such situations, and that is what they will project to the rest of the world. Say, oh, see how the bad things are in Africa, and these people are malnourished, they are hungry, and this and that, and so forth. That happens because we also feel, that, well, maybe there's nothing we can do about it. My contention is that some of these issues, I know where there's a conflict, we may not be able to do as much, but where situations do prevail, where we can be able to play a role to create, the kind of industries or activities that can address the problems that our people have. The question of what industry do I get into and so forth. I mean, there are just so many things that one can think of. Just the food supply itself. By the time the stuff gets into a supermarket, there's a whole chain of activity that has taken place, of which you can maybe determine at what point do you want to get involved. Do you want to get involved in the production of the food itself? Do you want to get involved in the manufacturing, conversion of that food into processed food and so forth? Or do you want to get involved in the supply of that food from the farmer to the market, or from the supermarket to the streets and so forth? So there's so many interventions that one can have, but it can only come about, again, when you get involved, you get to analyze what is the situation that we have and where can I use my talent or skill to solve that problem. We have, issues like housing shortages, construction. Again, there's a lot that can be done. From production of construction materials, from supply of construction materials, from selling of construction materials, and from the actual construction of buildings or houses and so forth. So there's a lot that we can do, but you never get to do these things unless you decide you want to get involved. And the more research you do on that activity, then you start refining your thought and say, okay, where do I think I can do best in this activity and so forth. I'm addressing this issue because as I travel in various parts of Africa, I get to meet young people, some coming out of university. They complain, well, there are no jobs. Okay. When you say there are no jobs, whom are you waiting to give you a job? Okay. In one sense, I may not blame you because the educational system may have made you believe, that the most important thing to have is your certificate, saying, oh, Jack so has got a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a bachelor's degree in engineering, and so forth. Therefore, the next thing that he has to do is to get employed. Okay? But we're at the stage where we cannot look at being employed as the only solution. We have to start looking at, okay, for the skills that I have attained in college or in school or in trade school, how can I convert that for me to become an employer so that I can be able to give employment to others and so forth. But again, you only come to that conscious decision when you do the necessary work to find out and analyze the situation and see what does it take for you to be able to provide that service. What are the sources of funding? How much money do you need? How do I write a business plan, a business proposal? If you don't know how to do that, whom can I go and consult? Quite often, You can go to, let's say, the banks. I don't know, different countries have different, situations. Most banks have got some business development uh, personnel who are out to look for businesses for their clients. And banks make money out of lending money to people. Okay, so you may come up with an idea. You go to your bank and talk to the business development guy, or some have got what they call this SME division, small and medium enterprises division, who try to work with small enterprises and so forth. They've got a reserve of information to assist you. Or you can go, as I mentioned last time, you can go to even some of the business people, some of the companies, hey, I want to do this, how do I go about it and so forth. You check the history of the successful business people in your community. How did they do it? Some of them have started off in a worse situation than you are in, but they worked their way to be where they are. But again, it was a question of getting involved, that they say, hey, I have an issue here, and how do I get out of it? Or here's a situation we have in our society, in our community. How do I contribute towards the solution? And then the next area is the area for politics. I mentioned the last time, that probably in the last 100 years, political change has been initiated mostly by young people. Or you may have maybe a mature person or an older person, coming up with an analysis of the situation that we have, which is young people will understand or try to understand what is this talking about, how does it affect me and how can I get involved? But over time, you find that many of the young people have started taking an initiative, of trying to analyze what situation they are in and how can they bring about change. I'd say for the most part, from the liberation struggles, from change of economic systems and so forth, it has always been young people who have been in the forefront. But those young people made a conscious decision to get involved. Even here in the USA, young people have made a big difference in the dynamics of the politics of this country. At one point, they used to be very, didn't want to get involved. They were very apathetic, to politics and so forth. But they became more conscious that when they don't get involved, then people are going to make decisions that affect their lives. And I would not want to believe that this is something that we should look at as a Western phenomenon. But in Africa, we also did it as well, that young people brought about political change. Now, how do you get involved in politics? There are several ways. First of all, depending on your country, having to decide, which political party better represents your feelings, what you would like to see. They are talking this kind of language that you think is going to make an impact on your society. And if you believe that organization is what represents your views, you go and join. I always say, always strive to be a thought leader in any organization that you're in. Some people join an organization and they'll just be quiet and waiting for somebody else to say something. They don't think they also have important views, that people can listen to and that can make a difference. I'm not assuming, that it's easy to get into politics in each and every country, but I think the process is basically the same. That when there is change to come, and when there's any movement to bring about the lives that people would need, is for you to get involved. Okay? I know that in some places, getting involved in politics could be a life and death type situation. But that happens because we have let people who think solving political differences is by eliminating the other person, not by sitting with the other person with a different views and see where you can come to a common objective. Your common objective is to make your country, your people live the quality of life that is, good for them. But when you have the attitude, that, well, if you have a different opinion than mine, I have to kill you so that it's only my views is going to prevail. That is not the solution. And I think uh, we all have situations where we know somebody who could be in the opposition party than we are. And when you start that dialogue, because you know each other, maybe you went to the same school or you grew up together, if you take politics out, there's nothing wrong in you. Your relationship is as normal as possible. But once you inject politics inside, then you find that you become two different monsters to each other. But these things can be changed. But my message really that if you are not involved, you'll end up with the leadership that you may not deserve, with the leadership that you may not uh, be happy with. But again, you have to make the analysis of what environment are you dealing with and so forth, and how best can you contribute politically. There are several levels of political engagement. It could even be at the community level, even in your own village, or in your own town, where you can be involved in the local political activities, and then, as time goes on, you can find yourself rising up to national prominence. I've seen a lot of people going through that route. But again, one thing with the politicians, they thrive on support. And if somebody is got the leadership and they are showing that you agree with the direction they are taking, definitely when you make yourself available, that yes, you want to be part of promoting, the cause that they are championing. Obviously, they'll again bring you in, say, oh yeah, okay, yeah, some of the responsibilities to do and so forth, and that is how you end up, let's say, getting, uh, uh, involved, and having to play a meaningful role. Again, this differs from country to country and from the local political dynamics and so forth. But at the end of the day, my message is that make the proper analysis, make an evaluation of where can you fit in the political environment so that you can be able to contribute to bring about the necessary change. Uh, I've been in situations where people are complaining, oh, our members of parliament, they are really down, The only reason why those people are there is that maybe even at the village level or the local level, they presented themselves and say, oh yes, I want to play this role, okay, you all vote for me and this and that and so forth. When such a person doesn't even have any alternative, or we're not giving our communities alternative, that, okay, I agree with what he's saying, but here's my views. And, you have to give people the chance to compare, the way in which you would approach it, the situation, and the way the other person may be approaching it, approaching the same situation to bring about the betterment of your community. I'd say that we must stop mystifying political involvement. I think that is one of the reasons why many young people or even older people tend not to want to get involved in politics, because we have mystified it so much. It's like those we find in political leadership, it's like they just dropped uh, from the skies, but they took conscious effort to bring themselves to the position, where they're providing that leadership. And I would say, anybody, any one of us is in a position to to be able to do that. So then you finally is getting involved. For instance, when you have national disasters, I mean, right now because of climate change, I mean, we're experiencing all kinds of climatic situations in Africa. I mean, for the first time, you now have, tornadoes and hurricanes. I mean, like in Mozambique and Zimbabwe. I mean, for the first time, we had, severe hurricanes, almost wiping out all communities and so forth. But because we had never experienced that, we didn't know how to handle that. When people were being told, oh, get out of the way, you've got your village in the valley, move on to the top of the, to high ground and so forth. Many couldn't even move. It's like, no, I can't leave my house alone here. What's going to happen? I'll just wait it out. And in no time, their houses and themselves were just wiped out, with landslides and so forth, because we'd never experienced that type of weather, and people didn't even understand when you say, "Oh, there's a hurricane coming." They didn't even know what you're talking about. And there's a tornado coming. In West Africa, you have these serious dust balls, that do okay. From time to time. I didn't know what dust balls meant until I was caught in one when I was in Nigeria at one point, in northern Nigeria. I mean, they experienced these dust storms quite a bit, at certain times of the year. But again, these are all results of climate change, because over time, the Sahara Desert has been losing, the vegetation and cover and so forth. And so you now have these storms, and they are quite severe. So when communities are affected with such disasters, again, we're in a position where we can assist. Again, get involved. At times we wait for the Red Cross or the Red Crescent, all these foreign organizations, to come and help to deal with the disasters that are affecting our communities. We shouldn't continue to do that. When such things happen, find out from your local authorities, hey, how can I go and help? Such and such an area has been affected by floods, and what can I do? Such and such an area has been affected by forest fires. How do I go and help out and so forth? So basically, this is my message today, that we can get involved at the various levels. There's nobody who has a monopoly, to get involved in politics or in the economy. All of us have got the opportunity to do so. It's a matter of us getting to get involved. My message, again, does not only apply to young people, it even applies to old people as well, because we're all in the same community. There's no community that is a young people community only. I mean, our community has got the elderly, the young, the infant, the babies, and so forth. So I hope my message will resonate with each and every one of us. Again, if you have any comments, questions, I'll be glad to address that. Okay, Wafula, I think I'm done.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Maponera. Maybe we can take some questions before we move on to today's country group speakers.
Okay.
All right, so we have a question from Michael Duzak. So they're asking, China has many contracts and investments in African countries. Are any of these investments benefiting the countries?
Chinese investments are very, 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 very funny in the sense that our governments, they invite them to come in. Secondly, the Chinese themselves, they are a population of 1.3 billion people in an area which is a quarter of Africa. So they are very, very much congested. So they have to find a way of reducing their population by exporting them to other countries. But the way they figured out they can do that is to combine their need for raw materials, which we have mostly in Africa, which they need for their industries. In order to extract those raw materials, they send in their manpower to do so. And secondly, the Chinese have come up because the Western countries, they were very exploitative in the sense that they came, they wanted our resources, they took the resources and left and to process them in their own home countries. The Chinese do more or less the same thing, but the Chinese have had an added strategy to that. For instance, they may find there's a mineral resource right in the middle of the jungle. But in order to get to that mineral resource, there's need for a road. So the Chinese will come and put in a first-class road to get to those minerals. But at the same time, when you have that road, it starts, helping the local communities where it passes through. Okay, they'll put in, there's need for power, then get power to that resource area. But on the way, the local communities also start having access to power and so forth. So that is an example of where there's mutual benefit. But the major problem with that is that when the Chinese are into that extractive mode, they are very destructive. They don't do much to rehabilitate, the areas that they've been, working on. So at the end of the day, they will leave a big open pit there, mess up our rivers and all that and so forth. And there has to be a better way of managing how they get involved. Finally, to me, they now provide a kind of a alternative to what the Western countries were doing. But the solution is really for us to be able to do what all these foreigners are doing for us in Africa. That, okay, if you need, let's say, question of lithium, which is used for making, these electric batteries and so forth for Western cars and so forth. Instead of allowing the company to just come and get the lithium and go and process it somewhere, say, okay, no, you come here, show us how you convert that lithium into electric batteries, and we'll do that for you. That is the condition in which we can give you access, to our minerals, but also at the same time you provide funds to rehabilitate them. So the China issue, it's a little bit complex in one sense. It has got its negatives and positives, so all I can say that we just have to have a thorough analysis of how we want to get them engaged and how we get the most benefit out of it than allowing them to just come and take and go.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Pondera. I'm going to bring in the country speakers we have for today.
Yeah, okay.
So up first,
thank you so much.
All right, thank you, sir. So up first we have Owusu Agbe from Ghana. Owusu, can you hear us? Hello, Owusu. Okay, let's try Derry Anthony. Derry Anthony from Ghana, can you hear us? Hello, Derry Anthony. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon.
All right, great. You've got a minute.
Okay. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give reports about activities that went on in the Ghana group within the week. Members who attended last week's meeting were thanked and asked to confirm the attendance for this week's meeting. To begin with, members were encouraged to invite more friends and family members to join the I Love Black People family. Various social media links were given for that invitation. Also, we're informed that our co-founder was celebrating his birthday within the week. Members sent their wishes to him through the group chat. In addition, a quote from Simon Kapwepwe was kept on the page. Also, we're informed of the reasons why there are no Black players on the Argentina soccer team. An article by Jude Idaida. Furthermore, members were encouraged to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly business globally. A format was given for the recommendation. Again, a quote of Thabo Mbeki was kept in the group. It says, as Africans, we need to share common recognition that all of us stand to lose if we fail to transform our continent. Also, another quote was kept on the page from Samora Makel, which says, solidarity is not an act of charity, but mutual aid between forces fighting for the same objective. We also informed that newsletters will be posted on Tuesday, so those who would like to contribute should submit their contributions by Thursday. Furthermore, an image was posted on the page with the inscription which says, there is only one race, the human race. Last but not least, new members were added to the group. Rules and regulations spelled out to them, documents about the family given to them to read, to know. Coming to COVID-19 updates in Ghana. Ghana has recorded a total of 94,011 cases since the emergence of COVID-19. Out of this, the active cases are 1,169. The number of recoveries are 92,057. And the deaths recorded are 785. Number of people vaccinated are 1,228,216. The end of the report. Derry Anthony, reporting from Ghana. I am because we are. Thank you.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Derry Anthony. All right, up next we have Blessed Udom from Nigeria. Blessed, can you hear us? Hello, Blessed. Can you hear us? All right, so it seems Blessed is having issues coming on. So we're going to move on to our Pan-African classes. Up first, we'll have Dr. Tyreen Wright, who's going to be leading the Pan-African Organizing online class. Later on, followed by Nana Akua, who's going to be leading the Pan-African healthcare class. So we're just having a Dr. Wright set up. Then I've also just shared a link to our member page that reads iloveblackpeople.com/member. If you have family and friends who are not members of I Love Black People yet, it will be great if you can share that link with them so that they can sign up to joining our movement. And if you have any questions about our membership levels, you can reach out to us on info@iloveblackpeople.com. Okay, so we are having Dr. Wright come on in a few minutes.
If we've learned anything from natural
Hello?
Yes, hello, Dr. Wright. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you all. All right, so let's get some clarity on the time right now. So for this session, I have until what, 11:45?
Yeah, still 11:45.
Okay, all right. Because I thought today we had already changed the time and Nana Akua was going to go first because of whatever. But okay, so no problem. We're gonna have to wait on the video because I was actually preparing myself for 11:45, not 10:45. But okay, so we'll jump right into you won't see me for a little while, but then you will shortly. However, I'm going to be sharing the documents. So this is Alex. Alex, it's you that I'm
Yes,
talking
this is
to?
Alex.
Okay, so
Yes.
most of what you're going to see are the visuals because I'm going to be sharing the readings that are our final readings that we're going over. And so folks who have access to the WhatsApp group see that we have a document there by Nkrumah for this week. Then the Declaration and Resolutions of the First Conference of Independent African States is the second document. And then also we have the address to the League of Nations by Haile Selassie. And then, of course, a piece by Amilcar Cabral, Identity and Dignity in the Context of Struggle. And I'm gonna give like a couple of seconds of video footage, but what I want to focus on here is that there is a creation and construction of more than one body, some that are created by us for us, and then others which are created to serve the interests of Europeans in general. A perfect example of that, as we will see, is the address to the League of Nations. Haile Selassie is addressing a body that is not interested in the preservation of Africa. And so what you will hear, Africa or African people. And so what you'll hear him talk about in the context of that particular piece and address is the fact that although the rest of the world had asserted this commitment during the Holocaust or the beginning of it, although there's an assertion for the protection of humanity in all of this, Ethiopia, when involved in the Ethiopian war against Italy, is forsaken, right? The Western world turns its back on Ethiopia. And not even so much to turn its back, but just an understanding that they were not interested in helping Ethiopia because they were on this side of the imperialists, right? Italy, hoping that Italy would get the opportunity to have its one colony on the African continent, because as you probably know, Italy doesn't have numerous colonies. The British and the French got lion's share. But that is in stark contrast to the document that we start with, which is by Nkrumah, where he talks about the need for a union government in Africa. And of course, we know that the Organization of African Unity grows out of this idea and this setting. And the Organization of African Unity then goes on to be what is the present day African Union. And if we had more time, we probably would or should be able to talk about, what the African Union today is or isn't doing, right? because the original vision and mission, and I'm going to share this now, the original vision and mission um, of the African Union or Organization of African Union Unity is to preserve Africa, to unify Africa. But that's not the vein in which it necessarily exists today. And why do I say that? I say that because I do know for a fact that 60% of the funding of the African Union today comes from the EU, the European Union. And so, how can you serve the interest of African people um, if you are funded by your opposers, your oppressors, your exploiters? Okay. So that is very problematic. But nonetheless, I'm about to share my screen, and I'm actually doing this from a device, so bear with me. So here we look at this particular document by Kwame Nkrumah. Okay, so he gives this speech at Cairo Summit Conference, Organization of African Unity, July 19, 1964. And we know it's only a few years before that, 57, 58, that Ghana comes into its own with the establishment of its independence, going from the Gold Coast to being what we know as present day Ghana, right? And independent and free from British rule. So can everybody see that? Because sometimes I mess up sharing my screen. Everybody can see the document on the screen?
Yes, we can see the document.
Okay, perfect. So the need for a union government for Africa. Right before I get into that, let me say one other thing. So you should be making the connections organizationally to First Pan-African Conference, right, in 1900. Pan-African Congresses, the first of its kind in 1919, with Du Bois as the first, as the initiator, but also an original attendee of the conference of 1900. He's the sole survivor. He comes up with the idea to create congresses, and the congresses would be continuous, 1919 on to 1945, which we had this document early on in our course. There are 5 congresses. You got the first and last, 1919 and 1945 congresses, right? So the first one in London, the last one in Manchester, UK as well. Those congresses are the grounds, the think tank through which this Organization of African Unity comes about. Okay, that is the setting. So if anybody wanted to know what was the significance of the congresses, it was one, that it was a space where African leadership finally in the Manchester Congress. These are conferences, but these are conferences which are continuous, which make them congresses. Okay. So I want to make that distinction. So if you, for people who study this history, that's the difference. But so there's the conference in 1900, and then there's the continuous conferences called the congresses from 1919 to 1945. But the congresses would be the setting through which the Organization of African Unity would come about. And it also would be the setting where African leadership, heads of states, would conclusively declare that individual independence by various states on the continent would not be good enough. They were aiming for total liberation and unification of the African continent. And we're still working on this, right? We're still working on it. It's a vision, but I think that that's an important vision because there have been some significant steps towards it, like for example, the Pan-African Free Trade Agreement put forth by the African Union, which will allow African nations and nationals to trade freely across borders, right? And that definitely is important for economic growth. One of the other good things that's coming about is the unified passport, but we'll see how that plays out. There's both problems and benefits to something like that, right? But I think it's something that could force, to some degree, some measure of continental unity, or at least move a step towards producing an Africa that's more beneficial to African people than it is to Europe and Europeans and the Western world, right? Because we don't have to be the United States of Africa. We just need to be an Africa that's unified to the benefit of African people, right? And that's part of how we get rid of, to a large extent, our unity is directly and diametrically opposed to racism, to xenophobia. Okay, so to get into the particulars of Nkrumah's speech, he's talking about what the need for a union government for Africa will do for the people. I'm just going to hit on a couple of points and delineate them, and then move on to the next document. But what we are looking at today is organizational efforts around African unity, which is Pan-Africanism. Okay. Mr. Chairman, in the year that has passed since we met in Addis Ababa and established the Organization of African Unity, I have had no reason to change my mind about the concrete proposals, which I made to you then, or about the reasons I gave for my conviction that only a union government can guarantee our survival. On the contrary, every hour since then, both in the world at large and on our own continent, has brought events to prove that our problems as individual states are insoluble, except in the context of African unity. That our security as individual states is indivisible from the security of the whole continent, that the freedom of our compatriots still in foreign chains and under colonial rule awaits the redeeming might of an African continental government. We took a monumental decision at the summit meeting in Addis Ababa last year. No amount of disappointment or impatience with the pace at which our charter has been implemented can detract from the epic-making and irrevocable nature of our decision to affirm the unity of our continent. So I'll read this little last part, but it was an act of faith, a recognition of reality. We forged the Organization of African Unity, fully conscious of all the difficulties facing our various states in committing themselves to common obligations. We have passed through the first year victorious over trials on our loyalty and over hostile forces seeking to disrupt our unity. Wherever and whenever the subsidiary bodies set up by the Addis Ababa Charter have met, the spirit of unity, of cooperation and goodwill have prevailed. On that score, none of us can complain. None of us has cause to doubt the strength and permanence of the spirit of unity, which found its expression in our charter. So the point is that, and this was the one document you had to read. The others I'm delineating. What in essence is said is that this is 1 year after the proposal is put forth for an Organization of African Unity. And Nkrumah is just saying in essence that he is still steadfast in this objective to have a body whose sole purpose is to bring about the unification of African people. continental African people. And I want to just go back to the original definition of Pan-Africanism, which is a bare bones, right? If you read that whole chapter on Booker T. Washington in Africa and the on Booker T. Washington in Africa, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist, and Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism, and the Pan-Africanists, you saw that at the end of the chapter, I kind of like gave a number of definition, well, a core definition, and then talked about that definition in the context of each of the proponents discussed there. What Pan-Africanism would have been to someone like Washington, what Pan-Africanism would have been to someone like Du Bois, what Pan-Africanism was to someone like Marcus Garvey, and then what Pan-Africanism would have been at that moment for people to come, like Nkrumah. And, you know, Nkrumah had a very specific definition of Pan-Africanism, the unification of African people under unification of Africa and its people under scientific socialism. However, the reality is that this organization of African unity has to deal with the bare bones decision to implement Pan-Africanism, and the core of that meaning the unification of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation. Why? Everybody's not going to get with scientific socialism, right? And don't get me wrong, I come from an organization that was that ideologically implements and subscribes to and identifies with, you know, Nkrumah's Touréism. It's called the All African People Revolutionary Party. However, you know, I recognize that the most important thing is unity, almost at all costs, because we don't think, and I talked about this last week, we think that our struggle is fighting those other people, when in actuality, our struggle is unity. And unity as a product, what we will get from unity is protection, is security, is sustainability, right? It is the opportunity to thrive because of all of the things that unity will provide. So unity actually provides the conditions for us to do what we need to do, right? I think around the world, everywhere Black people are, African people are, we are a little bit confused as to how to remedy our condition. And the truth of the matter is that unity is sort of like a blanket solution, in that unification across issues, politically and otherwise, allows for us to protect ourselves. However, unity is a big challenge, right? Because you have people who are invested, who are individualists, you know, and yes, there's a great deal of commonality between ethnic conflict, neocolonialism on the African continent, and individualism out in the Western Hemisphere. We have Black faces all the time out in the Western Hemisphere who get support of Black people, but have no agenda to remedy, or no program to remedy or even address the condition of African people, much like on the African continent. You know, Nkrumah in particular talks about this. Neocolonialism, the last stage of capitalism, right? Or imperialism, last stage of imperialism, sorry. So neocolonialism is just, you know, imperialism expressed by Black faces. It's a huge challenge on the African continent. And we already know how sophisticated we are. We're not fooled. We need to qualify people's behavior more. However, it does not take the average African person in any country that is being impacted by neocolonialism that much energy to see that the Black face in front of them is not serving their interest, right? That is, if we get into the history in the film that you watched, that is what is problematic about the Patrice Lumumba and the Mobutu Sese Seko, scenario, right? Mobutu, who would engage in a coup, would not have any interest in necessarily unifying the Congo per se, but more so in being a dictator that would be at the whims of the US government and Western powers to his own individual benefit, right? He's eventually put out and ousted. However, he pulls a coup with the support of the West. And certainly he will serve the West's interests in the most important region in the world, the Congo. So, Nkrumah is talking about what continental unity means for us. And continental unity means no puppet governments, right? No neo-colonial forces, no Black faces that don't serve Black and African interests. That's what continental unity does. So and let me just be very clear. Why do I say that? Because continental unity forces collective interests. Being divided, the guys in the North can serve European interests. The guys in the South can, Southern states, and countries can serve, American Western interests. The folks on the coast can serve, the British and French interests. We know the British got East and West tied up. I mean, more East, but yes, East. And when I'm talking about the African continent, right? And we know how the continent has been divided up already. So when you have continental unity, yes, through struggle, we can gain unity. And yes, the struggle is internal, right? So this is what Nkrumah is really talking about here. And you can see that in this address to an organizational body, the objective is about achieving that goal. It is not about revisiting how there was a lack of support and there's disappointment in the body. So I want to just highlight a couple of points and a few more points here before I move on. Okay, so hold on 1 second. Okay. So the one essential factor which united us at Addis Ababa, the overriding factor which made all differences and difficulties seem trivial and irrelevant, was the need to free that part of our continent which is still in the grips of imperialism. In spite of our charter, in spite of our common front in the United Nations and in other international gatherings, what have we witnessed? Far from deterring the imperialists and neo-colonialists from giving support to the apartheid regime in South Africa and to the fascist regime in Portugal, the NATO powers, on the contrary, have poured and are pouring vast sums of money and vast armaments into the apartheid regime of South Africa and Portugal. Not only is South Africa being assisted to grow stronger economically and militarily, but the cruelty, repression, and exploitation of our African brothers have reached new heights. At this point, I must comment on the activities of the Liberation Committee set up under the Organization of African Unity at Addis Ababa last year, on which both we and the freedom fighters pinned so much hope. It was with great regret that I raised the matter at all, but I would be failing in my duty to the freedom fighters and to the cause of African liberation if I remained silent about the general dissatisfaction which exists regarding the functioning of this committee. The frequent and persistent reports from freedom fighters about the shortcomings of the aid and facilities for training offered to them make it impossible for the government of Ghana to turn over its contribution to this committee until a reorganization has taken place for more effective and positive action. This is not a situation in which individuals or individual governments can be held to blame. It is our first essay in a task of stupendous magnitude and with stupendous difficulties. But some of the failures of the committee are inexcusable because they were so unnecessary. It failed, for instance, to make the best use of our resources, since some military specialists have been excluded on ideological grounds, right? If the Liberation Committee had made effective use of military experience of Egypt and of Algeria, where neo-colonialist interference and espionage have been frustrated and held at bay, we would have given freedom fighters the necessary help in their liberation struggle. The choice of the Congo, Leopoldville, as a training base for freedom fighters was a logical one, and there was every reason to accept the offer of the Congolese government to provide offices and accommodations for the representatives of the liberation movement. Africa's freedom fighters should not, however, have been exposed to the espionage, intrigues, frustrations, and disappointments which they have experienced in the last 8 months. What could be the result of entrusting the training of freedom fighters against imperialism into the hands of an imperialist agent? Under the Liberation Committee set up at Addis Ababa, the freedom fighters had no real security and were not provided with instruments of their struggle, nor were food, clothing, and medicine given to the men in training. Thus, their training scheme collapsed within 2 months under the eyes of the Liberation Committee, and the freedom fighters became disappointed, disgruntled, and frustrated. I am giving you no more than the bare bones of the complaints of the freedom fighters. It will not avail us to have a lengthy post-mortem over past failures, but these failures must be understood and acknowledged. The disappointment and frustration of the freedom fighters must not be dismissed as unreal and unreasonable. Not only the Liberation Committee, but of all of us are to blame for the way in which we allow the Liberation Committee to let down the freedom fighters. Anyway, the point of this all is just him looking at the nuts and bolts and addressing how we facilitate it. So, I wasn't going to read that part, but what I want to stress here was that, so you all are on the ground. You all are people who are going to bring about what this organization in particular, I Love Black People, envisions for us collectively, right? How you're supported, how we're supported in doing our work. And the work is always Pan-Africanism, right? The work is always unity for the purpose of our protection, our safety, our ultimate liberation, right? How you're supported in doing the work is part of our work, is part of the struggle. It is part and parcel of a whole. And so what Nkrumah is talking about, if we were just to take this and understand it in the larger picture, is that every part and point of the struggle for unity, facilitating it, is important work, right? It is important work. And this type of conversation is characteristic of the kind of conversations we have internally. As we go on, you're going to see a very different type of organization or, conversation to organizational bodies that are not us, right? So there's those inside conversations, right? Which this is what Nkrumah is having about the essential role of every point of our struggle and our struggle being unity, and the importance of every point of that struggle, be it freedom fighters or logistics, all of that. Okay. All of us play a key role. And I think this is a really important point for those of you who are on here that are ambassadors to I Love Black People, because it stresses the importance of the role and every person in each role understanding their commitment to our collective mission. Okay. I'm just gonna like fast forward to the end really quick. And Sinclair, one of the co-founders, he talks about some of the the politics within the OAU, right? And the Casablanca powers and the Monrovia powers and the pro-French Brazzaville states. And he talks about those subtitles. And to really be quite frank with you all, that to me in many instances is just indicative of all of our divisive aspects in our community, meaning we have so many different ways to classify each other. So we can have ideological differences, and that can cause us to call this group this and that group that. We can have national identities, right? Both out here and on the continent, where we're talking about this group or we're talking about that group, right? But all of these identities and even these ideological, because I would consider, the Casablanca powers, the the Monrovia group, and all of that. I would consider all those ideological factions within the OAU. So if you are interested in this, you can read at actually this part, because I'm not going to belabor this particular point. But what we must remember in light of that is that as much as you may have your own group identity, your commitment to our collective unity has to be greater, not just as great, greater, in order for us to achieve our goal, right? Has to be greater. So in other words, I'm not involved with this organization as an American. I'm involved with this organization as an African who is identifiably Black. Period. I'm not involved in this organization as an American person. And so likewise, all of our social, political, national identities should be secondary to our primary identity as African, as African and Black people who are working for unification around the world in order to protect not just one of us, not just a small group of us, but to protect all of us. Right? So that should always be at the forefront. But I just wanted to, I saw that Sinclair, the co-founder, had put some information in the Pan-African group to talk about this, factions essentially in the OAU. And I wanted to just briefly address that, okay? Because while they're important, it's important history. Our ultimate goal is unity. And this is why Nkrumah says here, they became particularly active and vocal in preaching the new and dangerous doctrine of the step-by-step course towards unity. If we take one step at a time, when they are in position to take 6 steps of every single one of ours, our weaknesses will, of course, be emphasized and exaggerated for their benefit. 1 step now, 2 steps later, then all will be fine in Africa for imperialism and neocolonialism. To say that the African Union government for Africa is premature is to sacrifice Africa on the altar of neocolonialism. Let's move forward together to the wider fields of our heritage, strong in our unity, where our common aspirations and hope find abundant expression in the power of our united endeavors. So, just once again, stressing the main point, and that's what's so important here. This conversation is going to be so much different from when Haile Selassie, who we know he did support the unification of Africa, is going to be different than his address to the League of Nations. A body that really has no commitment to African unity, is not a body of African heads of states and nations, and is a body that declared its willingness to protect nations in the world, but failed to protect any African nation. Why? Because their interest in the world is not connected to the preservation of Africa. In order for the rest of the world to thrive, we need to understand that it is at Africa's expense. And so, really our unity, and I spent a lot of time on this last time, but really our unity is diametrically opposed to the thriving and flourishment and development, further development of the Western world. So you must understand that there are a lot of people invested in interrupting, disrupting, derailing African unity. Okay. And right here, all over Africa, the essential economic pattern developed under colonialism remains. Not one of us, despite our political independence, has yet succeeded in breaking in any substantial measure our economic subservience to economic systems external to Africa. So just, the typical thing, Africa being an extraction point. It is the purpose of neocolonialism to maintain this economic relationship, right? The developed countries need the raw materials of Africa to maintain their own industries, and they are anxious to find markets in Africa for their manufactured goods. But there can be no market for these manufactured goods unless the people of Africa have the money with which to buy them. Therefore, I say that the developed countries have a vested interest in Africa's prosperity. That's a different take, but the truth of the matter is that he's trying to spin it that way. The truth of the matter is that no, the rest of the world, in order to exploit Africa's economies and raw goods and raw markets, they have to devalue what Africa has to offer and rob Africa and African people. So in many cases, our most valuable raw materials, such as minerals, are owned and exploited by foreign companies. Large markets of the wealth of Africa, which could be used for the economic development of Africa, are drained out of the continent in this way to bolster the economies of the developed nations, right? So he's talking about Africa being exploited, right? He tried to give a little spin there of what the interest would be in Africa flourishing, and then it would make the whole world flourish. But you have to understand, the Western world is not into, flourishing politics. They are at, the ugliest aspects of it, the you or me, right? The survival of the fittest, right? So the big I, the little you, that's what they are into. They're not interested in, hey, a philosophy that says that we can all thrive in this world. Part of what capitalism is all about is the exploitation of a certain group of people to the benefit of others. I had a friend, and I might have mentioned this before, said, don't we all want the same things? I said, hell no, we don't all want the same things. Some people want everything so that other people have nothing. And if we are not aware of that as African people, as Black people, we will not understand, and I think all of you on here do, we will not understand that for us, we do have to be something different. I'm talking about us Black people, African people. We do have to be something different, because if we think like that, when we do, and we will take not just Africa back, we will take our place back in the world. It's almost a numbers game and an ideological game, right? Meaning that numerically we are destined to um, it's, reemerge and maintain um, power again. And what do I mean by power? Meaning the power to sustain oneself. But if we have white minds, right? And I didn't put it up here, but I might just, as a parting gift, give you a couple of pieces from Frantz Fanon. You know, black face, black mask, white face, black mask. Is that the title? Let me see. It's black skin, white mask, right? If we don't recognize that there are a certain sect of us who have almost completely white minds, we will think that, hey, we all want the same things, and I just want to see the people in power be brown, be Black like me. No, we want substantial, qualifiable, tangible results, material results for African people, right? Because we want to be able to not just exist, but to thrive, right? So, no, we don't all want the same things. Some people want everything at other people's expense. Some of us want all of us to thrive. Okay. And there's a very clear line there in this world regarding that. Okay, so Alex, can I get a time check real quick?
Yes, you've got 15 more minutes.
Oh, okay, so I did not plan to spend that kind of time on here. All right. So I'm just going to I'll wrap up with just this little last part of, because I do want a Q&A, and I guess, you know, we're kind of like in this last 15 minutes, maybe if you want to reference the other documents, then we'll do so. But the last portion of this, the Soviet Union, whose scientists have astounded the world with their interplanetary exploits, began their union amid untold hardships and difficulties. With but three states, today the Soviet Union is composed of 16 federated states. We cannot wait. We dare not wait until we are encompassed by our doom for failing to seize the grand opportunity rising to the call of Africa's finest hour. This is the challenge which history has thrust upon us. This is the mandate we have received from our people, that we set about to create a union government for Africa now. And this is also the challenge which Providence and destiny has thrust upon us. We must not, we dare not fail or falter. And so, you know, read it in its entirety, this document. These are Nkrumah's actual words. One of the documents you definitely should keep in your arsenal. I'm on my device, so I want to see if there's I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can start asking questions. I might
just to go over one other document really quickly. You would want to read, I'm gonna share my screen again. You would want to read this particular document. All of them are important, but Declaration of Resolutions of the First Conference of Independent African States, Accra, Ghana. I'm not going to read the whole document or anything like that, but I just want to open it up in terms of the context. And this is right there at the point of independence of Ghana in particular, happening in Ghana, in Accra, and referencing the United Nations and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Charter, and the conference at Bandung, in its position on, once again, the independent African states. Now remember 1958, you only have Ghana establishing its independence, but it's important to understand that, Ghana could have had the attitude that it would only advocate for its independence or its regional independence. Why? Because much of West Africa, and those of you on the continent know this, much of West Africa was not experiencing, as brutal as colonialism was, we're not experiencing the same form of colonialism as East and Southern Africa, where Europeans settled on the continent, right? So much of West Africa, with the exception of Guinea-Bissau, would ultimately be subject to a political transfer of power and not armed struggle. Most of East and Southern Africa would have long protracted armed struggles, right? And this is part of why I included this last document here. And I'm just going to let you see my all my screens, because we don't have that much time. Okay, no, it's not happening. This is why I included this statement by Amilcar Cabral, because identity and dignity in the context of struggle. If you watch the film, you would have known that one of the things that was unique and important about Amilcar Cabral is this concept of the struggle forging unity. And that's the last thing I want to leave you with. And I know I switched up just a little bit because I was going to just do Haile Selassie and keep going. But I think that this is more important. Read this as you on your own. What is so important about Amilcar Cabral and his position is this. You saw just the last document, there was some mention of Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc in the Cold War, so Russia. A lot of our revolutionaries engaged in Marxist-Leninist ideology, the Eastern Bloc, and how they waged their struggles. But we must always remember, and I too come from an organization that had that ideological line, but it's one important thing to always remember about that with regard to us as Africans and the rest of the world, or the Eastern Bloc. They weren't thinking about us when Marx and Lenin and all of those people wrote what they wrote. So we should not impose their ideologies on our situation. And that's what I like about Amilcar Cabral. Sure, he was more left in his ideological position, more Eastern Bloc than Western Bloc, right? Which is totally capitalist. Eastern Bloc being more communist socialist. But Western expressions of all of these things are deeply distorted. Okay. That being said, we cannot take on their ideologies or philosophies that in our liberation process, we do not invoke our history. We do not invoke our culture. We only seek material gains. That's incorrect for us. Part of how we are colonized is by the destruction of our culture, which allows us to unify. It caused a destruction of our collective historical memory. One of the things with Patrice Lumumba, I don't know if you all know this, but Patrice Lumumba, when he is assassinated, for a period of time while Mobutu is in power, it was Patrice Lumumba's name is not spoken in the Congo. It was forbidden. And that's what allows, because his story was not allowed to be told, there's a whole urban art genre and scene that emerges because the people couldn't speak about Patrice Lumumba. They painted about it. They painted the story of Patrice Lumumba and his assassination because it was forbidden to be spoken. But when you can erase someone from the collective memory of a people, you also are taking away their opportunities for liberation if that was part of the colonization. So in other words, rewriting history. Right? Patrice Lumumba was overwhelmingly the story of African unity in the Congo. To say it could never be spoken or written about is to say that I'm going to erase that. And we know as Africans, there's nothing more powerful than the word. Right? We know that the word conjures and it evokes. So the reality is that for African people, we have to take back our history, our culture, as a means, as a part of the liberatory process. And Amilcar Cabral talks about that. So beware of the staunch Marxist Leninist line. You know, it's not a perfect fit. It's not a cookie cutter kind of situation for us as Africans, right? Anything you engage, take the best of what it is and that works for you, and the rest throw it away. But you should always remember that when Marx and Lenin were writing around about their struggles in the eastern part of the world, they weren't thinking about Africans. They weren't thinking about Black people, not even a little bit. Okay, so I wanted to give special exception to this because Amilcar Cabral talks about history and culture as tools of liberation, history as a weapon, culture as a weapon. And if you watch the film Cuba: An African Odyssey, it was a unique aspect to the Guinea-Bissau struggle in the sense that he did not allow Cuban soldiers to put their boots on the ground and fight in battle there. Why? Because of the simple fact that the people who were various different ethnicities prior to colonialism would have the opportunity to forge unity through a common struggle. That is what's so profound about what happened in Guinea-Bissau. The struggle, the quote from Cabral is directly this: the struggle will prepare the people for the victory. Right? The victory of becoming a nation, the victory of becoming unified, people from different ethnicities and women and men and young people, all of that, fighting for a common cause for the first time in their history, in actuality, on the earth. Right? Because African people are the oldest neighbors, right? We are the oldest friends, we're the oldest foes to each other. And so that's what that struggle for against colonialism would produce there, a opportunity to forge unity collectively. And yes, unity is that umbrella for all that we experience in worldwide exploitation and domination under white supremacy and capitalism. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there because I'm sure I'm right there at the time, if not over, I hope. All right, I'm 3 minutes ahead. If you want to give me, you want to read like a question or two, Alex, that somebody might have, but I want to stop exactly on time. Or I'll look at
All right.
some questions.
Yeah, I see we have one question from Augustine Nyakatoma. So they're asking, I would like to ask that after failure of Dr. Nkrumah, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, and Gaddafi to unite
Gaddafi.
Africa, yeah, what is the
What is
position
the,
of Africa it's as the vision of Nkrumah and Gaddafi
you know,
was?
this is the thing. It's so yes, there were failures in all, right? And not even so much all of their own failures. So I'm aware of the criticisms against Nkrumah and his energy. But I'm also aware of just, you know, I had the opportunity to see Gaddafi in person. I was part of an African Union activity years ago in 2004 called the First Conference of Intellectuals for Africa and the Diaspora. That being said, you know, today the vision still exists. However, much of economically, because we are not maximizing on the resources of Africa in Africa for Africans. Like I said, the African Union is being overwhelmingly funded by the European Union. How can you carry your own agenda if you're allowing an external, and I would even argue an enemy entity to fund you, right? So that being said, some of the things that I mentioned that are productive and are moving towards a positive angle or a positive objective for us globally and continentally in terms of unity are the free trade agreement, the unified African passport, regional unification of some various currencies on the African continent. So those are things that are positive that could lead to continental unification. But I really, to be quite frank with you, the most important guiding force is the people. Right. And we need to have some more. There has been very few since 2004 organized efforts by African leadership to discuss solely the purpose or revisit the issue of continental unity. It needs to be revisited. It's past due. Right. And I know for a fact that in 2004, they said that they were going to reconvene the conference in 10 years. They did not do that. And many of the participants don't care anymore. And heads of states don't want to do it. You know, I hope I answered your question, but I want to, if you can write questions in it, Alex, you can just copy them. I want to stop right on time. So it's 11:45. And I'll copy, if Alex, you can just copy that stuff and send it to me, and then I'll try to answer them because the conversation will continue, at least in the group, I believe, at some point. Okay. All right. Thank you all.
Yes.
And sorry, I'm not on camera this time. I was just kind of like perplexed about the time change back and forth. So anyway, neither here nor there. Thank you all. Let me just say this. Anybody wants to keep in touch with me, you can friend me on Facebook. I'll open that up. Okay. All right. Thank you. So, Alex,
Thank you.
guess you're welcome. I think it's time for Nana Akua, and I'm
Yes.
1 minute over. So let's close. Better than last week. Okay. All righty.
Hey, Nana Akua, can you hear us?
Nana Akua is on there. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. All righty. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peace, peace, peace. Thanks for joining us again. This is our last class. Okay, so I have my webcam on and I'm not liking how it looks. Hold on. Let me take this one off. I thought I wanted to be looking up at the other screen, but I don't think I want to. So peace and blessings, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm glad to see you all here, the people who have their cameras on. Yay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So if you are following our syllabus, this is our 6th class, and this completes our 6-week series for the Pan-African Healthcare course. And today we are talking about healing the emotions with flower essences or flower remedies.
Hello, Nanakwa. I'm sorry, when you changed your camera, your voice kind of went low.
It's low. Let me
Yes.
see if I can turn up the volume. Is this any better? And the camera
It's still the same.
It's still women. So then let me turn it back. Maybe that'll work.
No, we can't hear you now.
And it's still no good.
It's really low now.
Oh Lord, what is happening? I don't know what I have done. And still low.
Yes, it's still a bit low.
You have any suggestions as to what I should try?
Like, you have an external microphone connected or something of the sort? No.
No, I had an external webcam connected to my other monitor, but I just tried to get back in, since when I disconnected that made me go lower, but now that's not coming back on. I don't really know.
All right. Though I think we can proceed. Like, it's low, but like I can make out what you're saying. So.
Oh, that's terrible. I'm turning it up as high as it can go. Let me see.
Or maybe you can try dropping off and rejoining.
Okay, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, how is this?
All right, that's better now.
All right. So we are discussing healing the emotions. We're going to use flower remedies for that. We're going to talk about calming herbs for stress and anxiety. And then we're going to talk about creating a self-care plan. So I think the best way to start this conversation is just to really emphasize how important our emotional health and our mental health is. A lot of times when we talk about health, we're only focusing on the physical health, or we're talking about physical conditions. So I want to be clear that the entire person is important in healing, mind, body, and spirit. And so this being the last class, I didn't want to miss this opportunity to talk about really assessing how we feel. A lot of times we go about life and we are simply, you know, acting as if all is well. I often say that one of the biggest lies that most people tell, right, when they're asked, how are you, is, oh, I'm fine, or everything's good, or everything's all good. So I, you know, want to just have us sit and think for a minute exactly how we are feeling, you know, and you doing that for yourselves. I think it was the first week, maybe not the first week. One of the weeks talked about, it gave a checklist of how our emotions were, or what our stress level was. So it talked about environmental stress, emotional stress, physical stress, relational stress. If you remember that from maybe a few weeks back, that may also help to assess how we are actually doing. How are you doing in terms of how you feel about yourself? How you're doing in terms of how you are interacting or relating with other people? How you're doing in terms of how your physical body is functioning and responding, whether there are any illnesses and that sort of thing. How are you feeling about your financial situation, your living situation? There's so many things to just really stay on top of, and that affect how we feel. So this section is to focus on that, and not in a very specific way in terms of those things that cause stress, because we did talk about that when we talked about handling stress effectively, and we gave some exercises for that, and some baths and things of that nature. This section specifically talks about what to do when we have various emotions about those stressors in our lives. So if we are resentful, or if we are lonely, or if we are angry, if we're fearful, these are the emotions that I want to help you deal with today. So flower essences. Flower essences are the flowering parts of various trees and shrubs that are extracted from that flower and made into a remedy that will help balance various types of emotions. I guess this, I don't want to say just in North America, but even in Europe, North America, these parts of the world, we have, and that's a vast area, right? But we have what's commonly known as English flower remedies, okay? But then also on the other side of the world, there are also Australian flower essences or flower remedies. So the ones we'll talk about today are the English flower remedies, and there are 38, okay? If you choose to take my traditional herbalism class, we talk about both the English and the Australian flower essences, right? But just because of the differences of where the trees are grown or where they're native to, brings about the differences in the names of the trees and shrubs. But in essence, they're both the same in terms of there are different plants or trees that deal with different emotions. So if you have the handout, which is part 6, which I posted in the WhatsApp group, I think, right? You all have that? Right, because I usually do that like the next day after the last class. So I usually do that Sunday or Monday. But this handout gives you a very brief explanation of these different flower remedies. Again, in the herbalism class, we go over them in much more detail. Their different characteristics, different self-talk, different feelings, even different professions that people typically have, that are different types of people that use or would be best suited by some of these flower remedies. But here is just to give you that introduction and make you familiar with these different flower remedies, okay? So I want to just highlight a few. I'm certainly not going to go through all of these 38, but I can't stress enough, we're very strong people, African people, Black people. We often have, I think, a Superman or Superwoman attribute. I won't say complex or syndrome, right? I guess that kind of denotes that it's a bad thing, right? However, when overused, or when we sort of put ourselves and our well-being aside, it can be detrimental and it can be a negative thing. So yes, we are strong by nature. However, in that strength, we have to sit and take note of how we really are doing. And so I don't want us to just always be in Superman mode or, Superwoman mode and not address how we are really feeling, okay? So a couple of remedies that I think maybe apply to a lot of people and a lot of feelings that we have. Let me start with, I probably should put this on, if you'll allow me, even though I don't have it pulled up already. But if you will, Alex, allow me to share the screen, let me pull this document up so that if you're not in the WhatsApp group and you're joining us, you can still follow along.
Yes, you are allowed to share your screen.
Switch up on me. Okay, Yvonne, it's not. All right. Hi, Yvonne.
Hello.
So, okay. So let me go back and share. Give me 1 second as I act like I know what I'm doing. It didn't come out. Oh, yeah, there it is. Share. All right. So you can now easily follow along. So the first one I think that I will highlight is agrimony. That's the first one. And this is for treating patients, and I usually don't typically use the word patients, but throughout this document, which was not created by me. So I typically won't say patients, but for treating clients suffering inner torture, which they try to dissemble behind a facade of cheerfulness, often used as a remedy for alcoholism. But basically, if you're the type of person that usually just puts on a happy face, you hide behind the mask, and you want to always appear to be fine, agrimony is a remedy for you, okay? If you feel like you have to always put on, that front, that facade, that all is well, I strongly encourage you to consider agrimony. Another remedy is aspen. And this is for treating apprehension. People who have a sense of dread without knowing why, like they have anxiety, they can't really explain it, don't understand why, they feeling overly anxious. They just are kind of the nervous type, but not for any specific reason. Aspen may be something that would be good for you. Another one I'd like to highlight is cherry plum. Cherry plum is for treating clients suffering from uncontrolled, irrational thoughts, fear of losing control and doing something terrible, the fear of kind of going crazy, having uncontrollable bursts of temper or tantrums or rage. This is for impulsive people and people who are suicidal. So this is a very serious one, very powerful remedy. This is for the person that just sort of is, it kind of reminds me of that person we just spoke about that puts on the facade. This is usually for that person that has been probably putting on that facade because they've been trying to act like they're okay with those things that they can't control. And they are so afraid of losing control, not, you know, being able to take charge or handle a particular situation, that they just are constantly holding themselves in, and they're really tense, and they don't really know how to handle their emotions. They're always scared that I'm just going to lose it. If you don't stop, I'm just going to go off, or I'm going to go crazy. This is a cherry plum person. So this is the remedy for that type of person. Another one that I would like to highlight is chicory. Chicory is for the person that's possessive. They demand respect or attention. They're a bit selfish, self-centered. All the attention has to be on them. They like others to conform to their standards. You know, they're always the person that feels they're right. They're the model, the example. It's all about them. These are typically those, what do you call those people? And the word is escaping me now. Like a narcissist type, you know, it's all about them. The world revolves around them. These are people who usually are manipulators. They usually will have the martyr syndrome. It's like, oh, why is this happening to me? You know, I don't deserve this. It's usually that type of person. So if these are some characteristics, chicory may be the remedy for you. Clematis, this is for people who just sort of have sort of a kind of daydreaming, you know, they're aloof, they're not really present, sort of the absent-minded type of person, always kind of feel like they're out of it. And these are also the people who kind of try to escape reality. These would typically be people who maybe do use drugs or alcohol to try to escape from reality, you know, to kind of shut off what's really going on in the world. They are not really in the present. They're always kind of thinking, oh, what if, or what could be, or, you know, just really inattentive and not present. Clematis would be the remedy for that individual. Another remedy is elm. This is one of my favorites that I personally use. This is for the person or for the client who is temporarily overcome by inadequacy or responsibility, but basically just mentally fatigued and overwhelmed. Like there's something that's going on outside of the norm, outside of their normal duties and responsibilities, and it's overwhelming. This is usually for people who maybe get a new job, or someone who's just gotten married, or moved to a new place, or just had a baby, right? And they're just overwhelmed by these new responsibilities or these new changes and that sort of thing. If that's something that you're going through, elm would probably be a great remedy for you. Gorse is another one. I often will point gorse out for people who are feeling desperate and hopeless. They feel defeated. They kind of have given up. They feel like, oh, what's the use? What's the point? Why am I even going on? Why am I even going to bother? This might be used if there is illness or death in one's family that they maybe had to deal with, or just a number of different things, negative or bad events that have occurred, and the individual may just be feeling like it's too much to handle and they can see no way out. This is a remedy, gorse, that would be great for those types of feelings. Holly is for clients who are jealous, envious, vengeful, or suspicious types. These are people that never really kind of believe, you know, things at face value. They always kind of feel like somebody's up to something. They never trust people. They're hard to trust. they're the type that want to kind of get back at you. You do something to me, I'm gonna do something right back, but it's gonna be 10 times, you know, rougher, right? Holly is that remedy. Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle is a tree that kind of grows wild. Recently I've heard of a lot of people talking about honeysuckle and not even really knowing that it has medicinal purposes, even physically, but emotionally, it's for that nostalgic person, that person that dwells in the past. They may be homesick, or they may miss a particular situation, relationship, or job, or if say you've relocated to another part of the world, you know, you're missing your home, you know, where you were brought up, or your family, your people. Honeysuckle helps to really balance those feelings for people who are having that feeling of dwelling in the past and being homesick. Hornbeam is another favorite of mine. This is another one of those that deals with kind of feeling overwhelmed, mentally fatigued, kind of start tasks, you know, have trouble starting tasks, but once they do get started, they do get fulfilled. However, they put them off. They're the procrastinators. You know, you kind of get bogged down with just the thought of getting into a task, but once you get into it, fine, you usually can plow through it, be successful, and be you know, and complete it. It's just getting to that point. And they phrase the whole Monday morning blues thing. It's sort of like just having trouble getting started. Hornbeam would be the remedy for that. Impatience, another one of my, I won't say it's one of my favorites, it's one that I probably need. But this specifically treats impatience. People who are very impatient, things have to be done right away. You have trouble with the process, or at least a process that kind of takes a bit of time. Usually these are people that get highly irritated, or they're easily irritable about different situations that maybe don't move at the pace that they choose. And usually they behave in sort of a melodramatic manner, you know, maybe making more of a thing than it is. These are also people, though, that will tend to have like hypertension or different physical conditions, because again, emotions affect the whole person. So how this emotion, or how these sets of feelings can affect you, not only emotionally, but physically, is through elevated blood pressure. So if you're very impatient, easily irritable, or easily irritated, I should say, impatience is the remedy for you. Another one I wanted to highlight is mustard. Mustard, this treats sort of that dark cloud of depression type of syndrome. You know, you just feel like, oh, the world is just, you know, nothing goes my way. You know, I just feel like I'm walking around with a dark cloud over my head. And you just kind of feel gloomy, sometimes for no reason at all, or no known reason at all. This is just someone who's sort of at a low or saddened state. And I like highlighting things like gorse and mustard during these times, just because there's a lot of people transitioning because of COVID, or just for other underlying, you know, health issues. Life has been stressful these last, I guess, year and a half almost now. And so I really want people to know how to handle their emotions so that they can kind of get back into balance and really, you know, see things more clearly. And with, I always say, with new glasses on, because perspective is everything. And so these are things that kind of help, you know, improve your emotional vision. Okay. So it gives you a better perspective of how things really are. And you can get beyond that temporary emotion and move on and plow through whatever issue you have to face, whether it's something physical, whether it's, you know, just day-to-day life, work, school, what have you. So I like mustard and gross for those things, for those reasons. Sometimes we just feel down. We don't really know why. These are sort of your pick-me-up, your upliftment flower essences. Another one, and these next two, I also like to highlight, because even if you're not feeling gloomy or depressed, sometimes you just feel, you know, that you just kind of got to get some help to kind of plow through some mental and physical fatigue. So oak, this is for the brave, determined types, people who kind of struggle through, even though things might really be rough, but they're the type that's like, no, I got this, I can do it, you know, and they're the type against all odds, against any adversity, you know, this is back to that kind of Superman, you know, Superwoman, you know, type that I mentioned earlier. This is a person that never gets enough rest. They never just enjoy life and sit back and smell the roses, as they say. This is a person that feels like it's on me, you know, I can do it. This is what I was built for. This is what I made for. And not that those are negative traits or attributes. However, it can really wreak havoc on your emotional well-being because you don't take good self-care of yourself. So oak may be for that person. It's just, you know, it may be a ton of bricks on them and they still going, oh, I'm all right. I can do it. I can climb this tree with these tons of bricks on my back, you know? So oak might be for that type of person, that determined type that kind of struggles through, never accepts help, is going to just complete the job at all costs, even if it costs them their own well-being, okay? The next one, olive, also treats those who are drained of energy. This is for the person who, you know, every task is such an effort. Like, they can do it, but you know, it's like, if I could just get going, if I could just get started. So they're not maybe so much mentally fatigued, but just physically fatigued. And I don't know if you've ever, you know, heard of people talk about how depression, for example, is not just a psychological or mental issue, but it can affect you physically. So this speaks to that, where, you know, so there's a commercial here in the US that says depression hurts, right? And they show people kind of laying around and barely able to move. And so physically, they're demonstrating that that emotional mindset has had that physiological impact, right? That's what olive speaks to. It speaks to that emotion that's kind of weighing you down, not just mentally, but physically. And you're finding it hard to even get enough energy to kind of move about your life, okay? Olive would be the remedy for you in that regard. The next one I would like to highlight is rock water. This one is for people who are hard on themselves. Like we always hear the phrase, you know, you're your own worst critic. Like a lot of times we're very critical of ourselves. And that's a self-esteem issue, a self-love, a self-value issue. So this is, rock water is for people who are really tough on themselves. They often overwork themselves, kind of deny themselves the pleasures of life, of really enjoying themselves, and really, you know, get really focused and rigid on just doing what it is they feel they're supposed to do. They're the type that would think, you know, oh, you know, I got stuff to do. I don't have time to sit and just watch a movie, or I don't have time to just go pamper myself or get a massage, or I don't have time to just sit and do things. I have stuff to do. This is a rock water person. If you struggle with those types of feelings, rock water is your remedy. Moving on, Star of Bethlehem, another favorite of mine. This is a remedy that is good for treating all the effects of a serious incident. So I like that they put serious, but you know, something that we would consider bad or negative. So it might be an accident, it might be a death, it may be a serious injury or illness, but getting any word of bad news or serious news, some kind of trauma, you yourself may be in some sort of accident or incident. This is to help balance your emotions for any traumatic incident, okay? And it could be something that happened 5 seconds ago, or it could be a serious incident that happened 5 years ago. Okay, Star of Bethlehem helps you to deal with trauma. So again, whether childhood trauma or the fender bender you got into right at the corner a few minutes ago. Star of Bethlehem would be the remedy to kind of help balance your emotions from any type of trauma. And it helps you to release that trauma so that you can deal with the matter at hand. Another one that I want to highlight is Vine. Vine is for clients who are dominating, inflexible, ambitious, kind of arrogant, prideful, you know, that are just really headstrong. And, you know, we would say all of these things, of course, in a negative way, but we know that a lot of people who are very much like this are usually considered good leaders. However, these types of emotions can be really taken out of context and can really allow people to kind of get out of line. Okay, so if you find that you're not flexible, you're very rigid, things always have to be done your way, you know, this is the type of person that would say, oh, it's my way or the highway, or I know the best way to do it, or either do it my way or you're gonna fail. Like this would be that type of person. And usually this, of course, is the type of person that finds it hard to apologize, admit they're wrong, excuse me, or you know, just really get stuck in only believing that they know best and that they're the only ones that know the right answer or the solution. Vine is the remedy there. Walnut is another one I like a lot. This I think is very helpful for a lot of people. This is a protection remedy against powerful influences. Let me mute myself for just a second. Okay. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? I had to mute myself for a second. I don't know. Hopefully this cough is gone. So walnut is a protection remedy against powerful influences. This helps with people who have to adjust to transition or change. This I think is going to be useful for a lot of people because the only thing that is a sure thing is change. We know that everything must change. We will always, in whatever phase of life from day to day, we know that everything will change. Whether we're talking about life changes like, you know, infancy into toddler, you know, to being into puberty, being into young adulthood, menopause, your relationship status, you know, changing from being single to married or then divorcing, changing from where you grew up and where you were born and what you're used to moving to completely new surroundings. There'll always be changing from being in your parents' home and being taken care of to going out and growing and coming of age and getting your own job, your own place, and having to take care of yourself. All of these are things that will change. And that transition can be difficult for people. So if you know that you are maybe not quite feeling yourself, you're feeling out of control, or you're feeling, you know, just sort of going all over the place and not feeling grounded, and you can kind of sit back and realize, oh, this changed, or I'm having trouble adjusting to this transitional period, walnut is the remedy for you. I want to really get to willow, but so let's hit wild rose. This is for people who are drifters. You know, they accept a lot, but they kind of really make little or no effort towards improving, you know, so they kind of put a lot on their plate, but really get very little done. These are usually the people who lack ambition. You know, they may be mean well or not, because sometimes they're, you know, lack apathy. Sometimes they are apathetic. Sometimes, you know, they're resigned or they retreat from others. Yeah, you know, it's just the person who kind of just lacks motivation. Oh, what do you want to do with your life? I don't know. Well, okay, do you like this? Or what do you like? I don't know. I'm okay. Yeah, I don't care for much. You know, people who have a hard time figuring out what it is that they want to do and then moving towards that. Wild Rose is the remedy for them. And then the last one that I'll highlight, another favorite of mine, is Willow. Willow is for the client who experiences resentment and bitterness, okay? And if it's one of these negative emotions that probably get talked about a lot is bitterness. They wrote songs about it, you know, men accuse women of it and so on and so forth. But bitterness is a really big issue, right? For a lot of people, men and women. Right? But this is for the person that just feels, oh, this is not fair, you know, or they have this poor me attitude, or how could they do this to me? Or woe is me, right? And they harbor a lot of resentment towards others or various situations. And they just are left with this really bitter taste in their mouth. And that then controls everything that they do and controls every movement that they make. So if you recognize that you are having some resentment, there's some bitterness, Willow is your remedy, okay? And so I, of course, left out a few, but I really wanted to give you an example of the different feelings that we may have and that there is, in fact, a remedy that can address those things. If you are interested, I'm sure that if you know, Googled, there is actually a, it's like a self evaluation that you can do. There's like 116 questions that will help you get to which flower remedy is best for you. But I also have often used and suggested the Rescue Remedy 5, which is 5 of these remedies. And usually it is for that traumatic experience, that that wayward feeling, or you just kind of feeling some kind of way and you don't know why. It could be anxiety, it could be anger, it could be fear. But Rescue Remedy 5 is one of those remedies that will help kind of quickly bring you back into balance and balance your emotions so that you can function and not be overwhelmed with one feeling or one emotion over the other. So let me see what questions I may have that relate to me. Thank you for your positive comments, everyone. I appreciate you. I'm happy to share the information. Yeah, so no, these are definitely not diagnoses made by a psychologist. And most of what I'm sharing here through this entire course is more so for your own personal use, whatever you can do in terms of self-assessment, not emergency types of situations. If there is some long-standing, prevalent emotion or mental state that one feels they're in, definitely you should seek a psychologist or a social worker or a counselor or someone for, you know, assistance with those, you know, feelings. This is more so for people who can just sit back and say, okay, I'm kind of feeling a little off today. You know, I'm not myself, or I feel, you know, I just feel like I have a lot of anger and I don't know why. Or, ooh, I'm just so nervous and I don't know why. You know, so not, you know, a actual mental health condition. Okay. So I want to make that clear. So I'm glad for the question, but no, this is just simply you sort of self-evaluating yourself and how you're feeling. And how, good question. Thank you, Lisa Nicole. How you, so flower essences are made homeopathically. They're usually in liquid form, and you usually take them sublingually. So if you recall when we spoke about homeopathy in one of the previous sections, that is the remedy that you take directly under the tongue, and it goes directly into the body through the mucous membranes in the mouth, right? And so it kind of goes quickly into the bloodstream, and it just sort of helps almost immediately. And usually the way that you take flower essences is only 3 to 5 drops under your tongue. You can do it once, twice, 3 times a day. And usually you'll do it for just a few days. When I've personally used them for certain situations, I have changed my whole perspective in a matter of 2 days. Other situations that were a little more difficult to kind of wrap my head around and balance my emotions with may have taken 2 weeks. But what you're looking for is to just feel some relief, to feel a clearer head, to not be overcome with whatever that emotion is, right? So that's sort of the point. But yes, sublingually, under the tongue, 3 to 5 drops, once, twice, 3 times a day, depending on what the issue is and how severe it is. And you can always sort of adjust or increase or decrease once you start feeling better. And yeah, so they're ingested. Yeah, yes, we all got some of this stuff. And I know that these are all presented in the negative. So when we talk about the flower essences and we talk about all the characteristics in its entirety, you know, it's not all from a negative perspective, but yes, you will crack yourself up going, oh, wow, you know, I'm a mess, or emotionally, this is crazy. Like, I really, and like I said the impatience, for example, is mine, right? And I literally do have it. And I am impatient. Like I always tell people, patience is not one of my virtues. Never has been. And so I'm trying to work on it. So, but, and this is what it's about. And I'm usually a little more revealing, but we being recorded and it's a bunch of people. So I won't say too much about how I have used the remedies, but it's nothing wrong with, and that I think is how you get to a self-mastery place, because you have to really evaluate yourself, the good, bad, and the ugly. And you know how you fall short sometimes, or you know how you can be a little off or a little crazy, quote unquote, you know, or, you know, just a little off-centered. Flower remedies kind of help put us back in that group place, that balanced place, you know, even if we wouldn't want to admit it out loud that, you know, we have some of these things, right? Yeah, so, you know, if you Google flower essences or flower remedies, the handout, as you see, it says Dr. Bach, but, you know, as a lot of Europeans do, things that have existed for centuries, they'll attach their name to it as if they founded it, discovered it, created it, even more than God, you know. And so, but for sure, if you put Bach flower remedies, you will very easily find it. However, it's really under the scope of flower remedies or flower essences. Bach is just a brand. He is an Englishman that sort of just kind of coined the phrase and made it popular and bottled them and sold them and that sort of thing. But if you just Google flower remedies, you will find a lot of information about it. Great question. So yeah, how they pair, someone's asking about, you know, how it kind of pairs with actual psychological conditions, you know. The best answer I have for that is just God is amazing. And nature gives us everything we need. And just inherently, these herbs will do all the things that our mind, our bodies, our spirit needs. So I can't give a better explanation as to how it really aligns like that and why it does these things that some of these pharmaceutical, you know, drugs do, and how it really makes sense for folk who have maybe studied psychology or psychiatry. And you'll see how there's similarities to, you know, certain pharmaceutical drugs that do a thing, and then you'll find an herb or a natural remedy that will do that same thing. You know, our bodies are our bodies. It's just a matter of which route we choose. And not that herbs are the only option and work for everybody. So if someone is in a, you know, has a mental challenge and need to take, you know, psychotropic drugs to be safe and to be balanced and to be functional, there's not a problem with that. So I'm not putting that down at all. But this, for me, is just showing that there are options, other options, additional options. You know, a lot of people will do both. Sometimes people will go to the doctor and they'll take something, and it maybe takes the edge off. Like here in the States, they have a lot of commercials about these different psychotropic drugs, and they'll say, oh, even if you take this, you may still experience symptoms of depression or other symptoms or whatever. So for some people, they choose to take what maybe they've been prescribed, but then something additional to complement that in the way of herbs to kind of take that additional, you know, imbalance, you know, bring that back into balance. So if you're still feeling some milder depression than you were, then, you know, taking some of the nervine or calming herbs may really help, you know, improve that drug. African, I'm sure there are African flower essences, but it's not been kind of publicized or written in, you know, text to where we can easily kind of study it. So yeah, if I find that out, I will definitely be the first to copy it and paste it and teach on it and what have you. But yeah, I don't know that there are used in this way, but we definitely know that just as with there are African herbs or herbs, you know, that are indigenous to the continent, I'm sure they will have this effectiveness with balancing the emotions, just as these remedies that we're talking about do. Yeah, so yes, if you're asking how to get to the WhatsApp, the link is posted here, how to join. You do have to join and be a member to be a part of the WhatsApp group. Yes, they do take possession of everything, Mama Denise. Yes, they do. That's what they do. Stuff that's been already here forever. They founded it. Yeah, so Rescue Remedy 5, and it has, I know it's Star of Bethlehem, so it has 5 of the remedies. I want to say it is Star of Bethlehem for sure. I think it's Scleranthus. I want to say Rock Rose. I can't remember, but it's of these 38, it's 5 of those that deal specifically with trauma and tragedy and just really balancing the emotions when there's a real heightened state. Okay, so so that's flower remedies. I highly, highly suggest that you learn more about those and really heal your emotions so that you really feel better. And so you will really not be just saying that you're fine, but that you're really fine. I won't go specifically through each of these, but I wanted to include calming herbs. These are relaxing teas that help with stress and anxiety. Again, we as African people have had a very traumatic life. And I think Dr. Wright was saying how these people weren't thinking about us and don't care about us. And our psyche, our spirit knows that and feels that. And so we have endured so much trauma and so much that we've suffered through, right? Now we've endured and we've thrived, right? But we still have those remnants. So it's very important that we really just heal ourselves, treat ourselves well. And so here are some other herbs that can help us to do that. Nervine herbs, basically they heal and tonify the nervous system. So these are herbs that help relax the body. It calms the nervous system so that you can sleep well, get good rest, manage stress, alleviate tension headaches, any signs of anxiety that exist in the mind and the body. So these are herbs that help do that. Lemon balm is one. Oat is another. Hops, chamomile, kava kava. Kava kava is really great for anxiety in particular. All the other ones that were previously shown, definitely good for insomnia, basic stress, things like that. But kava kava is especially known for anxiety. Skullcap, same thing, good for just feeling mentally exhausted, having trouble resting, things like that. Wood betony, same thing. It's a calming herb, also good for anxiety. Passion flower, valerian. Valerian is one of my favorite herbs. It's a strong sedative. It helps with gastrointestinal symptoms, IBS, diarrhea. It smells really bad, but it's really, really great. It is good for insomnia. It's good for pain, and usually good across the board in terms of ages. It's great for young people, pregnant women, elderly or senior people. Valerian is just sort of one of those all around good sedative types of herbs. So in addition to really helping relieve stress and anxiety and tension and insomnia, it also has those other useful things with the whole gastrointestinal system. Motherwort is another one. This has some added benefits because it helps with hypertension and heart palpitations. Also good for women because it's good for PMS. Linden flowers, dragon eye fruit or dragon fruit, reishi and maitake mushrooms also have calming effects. So these are just some of the herbs that you can just really add to your natural medicine chest in the event that life gets stressful, or in the event that you're having a little trouble sleeping, or in the event that you're feeling a little overly anxious and there's something going on in your life that's kind of got you a little unsettled. So you now have flower essences and herbs that specifically balance those emotions and helps you to relieve stress. The last thing that I want to talk about is this is a personal care plan. Spirit kind of gave me this, and I made this little kind of amateurish looking form, right? I'm not great with technology. I'm not great with designing things. But as a healer and as a mother, I am often burdened and overwhelmed with how to help whoever I'm in charge of, right? And so, and sometimes when we even know and are trained and we have learned how to heal different conditions in different situations, in the midst of it, it can still be difficult to focus because our emotions are involved. And if there is something traumatic surrounding that issue, it can be difficult to have a clear head and know what it is that you need to do. So this personal care plan is just for you before you're in a crisis, you know, before there's, you know, an illness or some discomfort. You can set aside your personal care plan, and you can do one for each of whoever you're in charge with. If you have children, if you have a spouse, you know, a parent or whoever that you may need to take care of, this is something you can kind of sit aside and put where everything is written out already before there is an incident. So it's basically, and it's best for, I've used it for my children just because, you know, common childhood issues, right? You know, children, you know, have tummy aches a lot, or they eat the wrong thing, or what have you, or colds or fevers, or even adults, you know, if we, you know, get stressed and we, you know, have trouble sleeping or whatever. It could be something as mild and common as those things, or it can be a person who has an actual condition. So someone that you know is asthmatic or hypertensive or diabetic, right? These questions just help you already put out on paper so that you don't have to think about it, what it is that you should do when those times arise. So when I'm not feeling well, this is what I do. This is what I eat, right? If there's a food that makes, so I always keep in the house for children, right? These little fruit pops, right? So even if they've had diarrhea or vomiting and they can't really eat or their stomach is upset, I am a big person about what you then put into your mouth, right? So my children, you say your stomach hurt, you eating very little or nothing, right? I'm gonna give you some Outshine Pops and make sure you know, are still getting some kind of nourishment, but it's minimal so that your body can heal, right? Or it might be some type of electrolyte drink, some emergency or something like that, right? And then, you know, if you can keep food down and that sort of thing, then it might be something simple like some toast or some crackers, right? Whatever it may be. Or if it's a cold or a flu, it may be some chicken noodle soup or some vegetable soup or something of that nature. This is what I mean in this regard. When I'm not feeling well, this is what I drink. So again, if it's hot tea, if it's water with lemon, if it is some kind of broth, if it's apple juice, whatever it is that you know will bring comfort and help heal that situation, you want to jot that down. This is what I take. What supplements, what remedies, what things would you have on hand? What would you go to first for your diabetic mother, you know? Or what things would you go for first for your husband that has the flu? So these are things that you would jot down so that you don't have to think about it. Oh, okay, she's constipated. Oh gosh, what do I do? So you would already have on hand aloe vera juice or slippery elm tea or whatever remedy that you know. Or if you're, you know, standard person and you keep Pepto-Bismol or whatever in the medicine cabinet, but have it already written out. And then so that you have your emotions in check because you're the caregiver, you want to be able to assess, this is how I feel emotionally. So when someone's sick and you're caring for them, does it pep you up and you be like, okay, nope, I got this. I'm a good caregiver. I can take care of them. Or do you feel like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And you're feeling, you know, hopeless. But already know what state these situations put you in so that you can prepare and know how to handle it and you can overcome that. This is how I stay calm. This is what I do. You may play music. You may burn some incense. You may, you know, cut the fan on, cut the heat on, whatever helps you to calm down. You yourself may drink some tea. You may do some breathing exercises. And then if you know that you're the type that maybe needs some support, who is it that you would call, right? Who do you need to inform that this is going on? And it may be to just inform them, like if it's a parent you're taking care of, you may just call, of course, your siblings, right? Or if it's your spouse, you may call your grown children and say, oh, okay, dad's not feeling well, blah, blah, blah. And that might just be to inform, but then the next one, you might need to call somebody to get support. Who do I call to get support for me? Who can assist me while I'm taking care of either myself or someone else? Who's usually that calming person, that person of reason, that person that's gonna help keep me level-headed so that I can do what I have to do to feel better or to help someone else feel better. And then, of course, when is it that I go to get help? At what point, you know, if they're hypertensive, you know, at what level of blood pressure reading do I go and call for an appointment? Or at how high is the blood sugar, right, before I go to the emergency room? Whatever the situation that you know may commonly happen. If it's you caring for a child and say they have you're comfortable with them having, say, 101 degree temperature, right? And you're like, okay, let me just, you know, do my ginger baths, you know, let me, you know, give them some belladonna, you know, and I can get the temperature down. But, oh, okay, at 104, you may say, okay, wait, let me get some help. Let me take them somewhere. Whatever the situation, know what to do at each step. Have it written out already so that you are prepared and you're not in this very excitable state having to figure out what to do, okay? So we are at the end, and let me see if there are any other comments. Okay, host, there's somebody saying they have applied several times to be an ambassador, so maybe you all need to reach out and get some more information about that. Yeah, so let me not give an official answer on whether it's safe to take herbs with pharmaceutical drugs. Yeah, usually it is the pharmaceutical drug itself that is, of course, the issue of concern, and how or what it's made of that may not be good to mix with an herb. Usually, by and large, herbs are safe, but it is when you have to consider, oh, I'm taking something else, how will that interact? There is, so that I don't get myself in hot water, there is a book that gives, oh my goodness, what is the name of that book? There's a book that gives information on drug and natural remedy interactions. And I have it at my office. I don't have it here in front of me, so I'm not remembering. But there are books available, references to where you can check if there is a contraindication for a certain type of medicine with a herb or another natural remedy. So, and that is something to check before using. That's my official answer. Check if there is a contraindication while using a particular pharmaceutical drug before using a herb. So I don't think there are any more questions. This is our last session. I thank you all. I don't know that there's anything against you taking it again, but we're going to revise it a bit for the next session, so it'll be a little more compressed in terms of the number of weeks, I believe. But you're always also welcome to contact me directly if there are any other classes that I offer that you're interested in. I do a self-healing series. I do a traditional herbalism series. A donation is required for those, so that is a little different here from this platform. The founders take care of that for you all in this regard, but the classes that I offer through my ministry are on a membership basis, which is easy to do, and a donation basis. So, but if you have no other questions, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate you. I am glad that you have taken an interest in your health and your well-being. You've empowered yourself. Even if you just got a tidbit of what I offered and didn't follow everything exactly or understand everything to a T, at least you're now familiar with it, you've heard it, you'll recognize it again. Hopefully you'll go forth and Google some more or take a class with me or someone else and get more detailed information. But I thank you. I appreciate the love. And if there's nothing else, I bid you good health and peace.
And thank you so much.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.